The Boy and the Iron Dragon, The Lost Kingdom. Chapter 1. The Boy Who Found a Key. In a dry, dusty land called Oakhaven, there was no rain. The ground was hard like stone. The trees had no leaves. The people were always thirsty and tired. Among them lived a young boy named Kai. Kai was 12 years old, but he was very small for his age. He had messy brown hair and bright green eyes that always looked for something special. One afternoon, Kai was digging in his backyard. He was looking for old cans to sell for a piece of bread. His shovel hit something hard. Clang! It didn't sound like a can. It sounded like heavy metal. Kai dug faster. The sun was hot on his neck, but he didn't care. Finally, he pulled out a long, rusty key. But it was not a normal key. It was as big as his arm, and it was shaped like a dragon's tooth. "What is this?" Kai whispered. He wiped the dirt off the key. Suddenly, the key started to glow with a faint, blue light. It felt warm in his hands. Suddenly, an old man named Mr. Bram walked by. Mr. Bram was the oldest person in the village. He saw the glowing key and stopped. His eyes went wide. "Kai!" Mr. Bram shouted. "Where did you find that? Hide it! Hide it now!" Kai was confused. "It's just a key, Mr. Bram. Why are you scared?" Mr. Bram looked around to make sure no one was watching. He leaned in close. "That is not a key for a door, Kai. That is the heart key of the Iron Dragon. Legend says the dragon is hidden deep inside the Iron Mountain. If you wake the dragon, the water will return to Oakhaven. But be careful. The shadows are looking for that key too." Chapter 2. The Shadow Riders. That night, Kai could not sleep. He put the heart key under his pillow. It was still warm. He thought about the Iron Dragon. Could a dragon really bring water back to his dry village? Suddenly he heard a loud noise outside. Gallop, gallop, gallop. It sounded like horses, but the sound was too heavy. Kai looked out his small window. In the moonlight, he saw 3 tall figures on black mechanical horses. These were the Shadow Riders. They wore long black capes and their faces were hidden behind metal masks. Their eyes glowed red. "Where is the boy?" one rider asked. His voice sounded like dry leaves. "The master wants the heart key. Find him." Kai's heart jumped. He grabbed his bag, put the heart key inside, and crawled out of the back window. He didn't have a plan. He only knew he had to run. He ran toward the Iron Mountain. The ground was rocky, and the wind was cold. Behind him, he heard the red-eyed horses getting closer. "Clop, clop, clop!" "There he is!" a rider shouted. Kai ran faster. He saw a small cave in the side of the mountain. He dived inside just as a metal rope flew over his head. The cave was dark and smelled like old metal. Kai crawled deeper and deeper into the darkness until he couldn't hear the riders anymore. He was safe for now, but he was lost. Chapter 3. The Sleeping Giant. Kai walked through the dark tunnel for a long time. He used the blue light from the heart key to see the way. The walls of the tunnel were not made of rock. They were made of silver and iron. This is not a natural cave, Kai realized. This is a giant machine. Finally, he reached a huge room. In the center of the room, there was a mountain of metal. No, it wasn't a mountain, it was a dragon. It was made of shining steel and gold. Its wings were like giant shields, and its tail was as long as a street. But the dragon was not moving. It looked dead. On its chest, there was a hole. The hole was exactly the same shape as the heart key. "Wake up," Kai whispered. He climbed onto the dragon's chest. His hands were shaking. He took the heart key and pushed it into the hole. Click! Whirr! A loud sound filled the room. Blue light started to flow through the dragon's body like blood. The dragon's eyes flickered. First orange, then yellow, and finally a bright friendly blue. The dragon moved its head. It looked at Kai. Who woke me?" the dragon asked. Its voice was deep and powerful, like thunder in the distance. "I am Kai," the boy said bravely. "My village is dying. We have no water. Mr. Bram said you can help us. The dragon stood up, stretching its giant metal wings. I am Ignis. I have slept for 1,000 years. The world has changed, Kai. The water is not gone. It is being stolen by the Shadow Master in the Dark City. If you want the water back, we must fight. I am just a boy, Kai said, looking at his small hands. And I am just a machine, Ignis replied. But together we are a spark. Climb on, Kai. We have a long journey ahead. Chapter 4. The Flight Above the Clouds. Kai climbed onto the back of the great iron dragon. The metal was surprisingly warm, not cold like a normal spoon or a gate. Ignis, the dragon, had a row of silver handles along his neck. Kai gripped them tightly with both hands. Are you ready, Kai? Ignis asked. The dragon's voice made Kai's chest vibrate. I think so, Kai whispered. He was nervous. He had never been higher than the roof of his house. Hold on tight, Ignis warned. The sky is not as gentle as the land. With a massive whoosh, Ignis spread his wings. They were so large they covered the entire room. The dragon jumped, and his powerful mechanical legs pushed them toward a large opening in the ceiling of the mountain. Kai felt his stomach drop. It was like falling, but in reverse. They shot out of the mountain and into the night sky. Kai screamed, but it wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of joy. The wind rushed past his ears. Below him, the dry land of Oakhaven looked like a small brown carpet. For the first time in his life, Kai could see the world beyond the dust. Look, Kai shouted, pointing to the east. High above the clouds, the moon was huge and white. The clouds looked like a sea of soft cotton. Ignis flew gracefully. He didn't just flap his wings, he seemed to glide on the wind. Every time he moved, Kai could hear the soft click-clack of the gears turning inside the dragon's neck. Why did the Shadow Master take the water, Ignis? Kai asked after they had been flying for an hour. The Shadow Master believes that power is better than life, Ignis replied sadly. He uses the water to run his giant factories in the Dark City. He makes machines of war, machines that do not have hearts. He forgot that without water the trees die, and without trees the soul of the world dies. Is he a man or a monster? He was once a man, Ignis said, but he replaced his heart with a stone made of cold coal. Now he feels nothing. Suddenly the air became thick and black. The beautiful white clouds were replaced by heavy, stinking smoke. In the distance, Kai saw a city made of black iron and red fire. There were no trees there. There were only tall chimneys blowing smoke into the sky. This was the Dark City. We must be quiet now, Ignis whispered. He folded his wings slightly to dive lower, hiding in the shadows of the smoke. The Shadow Master has eyes everywhere. Chapter 5. The Forest of Iron. They landed softly on the edge of the Dark City. Instead of soft grass, the ground was covered in broken metal and sharp wires. It was a forest of iron. Dead machines stood everywhere like frozen statues. We need to find the Great Valve, Ignis said, his blue eyes scanning the area. It is a giant wheel that controls the flow of the river. The Shadow Master has locked it behind the walls of the Black Tower. Kai jumped down from the dragon's back. He felt very small in this scary place. How do we get inside? There are guards everywhere. Indeed, Kai could see mechanical soldiers walking in circles around the tower. They had long spears that shot red light. They didn't talk. They only made a clicking sound like angry insects. I will create a distraction, Ignis said. I will fly near the front gate and roar. All the guards will run to me. While they are busy, you must crawl through the pipes. Me? Alone? Kai's voice shook. You are small, Kai. That is your strength today. You can go where I cannot. Take the heart key. It is not just a key for me. It can unlock any machine built by the ancients. Kai looked at the Black Tower. It was very tall and looked like a jagged tooth reaching for the sky. He felt a cold wind blow through his thin shirt. He wanted to go home. He wanted to sit in his backyard and dream. But then he remembered the thirsty children in his village. He remembered the dry, dead trees. "Okay," Kai said, nodding. "I will do it." Ignis touched Kai's shoulder with his large metal nose. "You have the heart of a lion, little boy. Go now. When you hear the thunder, run." Kai hid behind a large rusty pipe. Suddenly, a massive roar echoed through the city. Roo-ah! It was Ignis! The dragon flew over the front gate, breathing a stream of blue fire into the air. "Intruder! Intruder!" the mechanical guards shouted in their metallic voices. They turned away from the tower and started running toward Ignis. "Now!" Kai whispered to himself. He found a small pipe that was leaking a little bit of oily water. He squeezed his body inside. It was tight and smelled terrible. He crawled on his hands and knees, scrape, scrape, scrape. Every sound felt as loud as a drum in the quiet pipe. He climbed up, then left, then up again. Finally, he reached a metal grate. He looked through it and saw a massive room. In the middle of the room was a wheel as big as a house. It was held by heavy black chains. "The great valve," Kai whispered. But he wasn't alone. In front of the wheel stood a tall man in a long silver coat. He didn't have a face, just a smooth metal mask with 2 red dots for eyes. He was holding a remote control. "I knew someone would come," the man said. His voice was cold, like ice hitting the floor. "The little boy from the dust. Welcome to my tower, Kai." Chapter 6. The Shadow Master's Trap. Kai's heart was drumming against his ribs. He stayed very still inside the pipe, his fingers gripping the metal grate. The man in the silver coat, the Shadow Master, did not move. He stood as still as a statue, his red eyes glowing in the dark room. "You can come out, little bird," the Shadow Master said. His voice was not loud, but it filled the room like a cold fog. "I have been watching you through the eyes of my mechanical birds since you left the mountain." Kai knew he couldn't hide anymore. He pushed the grate open. Clack. It fell to the floor, making a loud sound. Kai climbed out, dusty and smelling like old oil. He stood up and faced the tall man. Compared to the Shadow Master, Kai looked like a tiny ant. "Why are you doing this?" Kai asked. His voice was small, but he tried to make it brave. "The people in Oakhaven are thirsty. The trees are dying. You have so much water here, why won't you share it?" The Shadow Master laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. He walked toward the giant wheel, the great valve. "Sharing is for the weak, Kai. Water is not just for drinking. Water is steam. Steam is pressure. Pressure is power. With this water, I can build 1,000 more dragons like yours, but mine will not have hearts. They will obey only me." He pointed his hand at Kai. Suddenly, the floor began to move. 2 mechanical arms reached out from the walls and grabbed Kai's backpack. "Hey, let go!" Kai shouted. He struggled, but the metal arms were too strong. They pulled the backpack away and dropped it at the Shadow Master's feet. The Shadow Master reached into the bag and pulled out the heart key. He held it up to the light. The blue glow of the key reflected on his smooth, faceless mask. "The ancients were foolish," the Shadow Master whispered. "They put a heart into their machines. They gave them feelings. That is why they failed. But I will use this key to unlock the final gate of power." He turned away from Kai and walked toward a small pedestal near the giant wheel. "Once I put this key here, the water will be locked forever and my army will wake up. You have lost, little boy." Outside, Kai heard a loud explosion. Boom! He knew it was Ignis, fighting the guards, but Ignis couldn't help him here. Kai had to think fast. He looked at the giant wheel, then at the Shadow Master, and then at the floor. He saw a small puddle of oil near the Shadow Master's boots. Chapter 7. The Battle of the Black Tower. Kai didn't have a sword. He didn't have magic. But he was a boy who had spent his whole life fixing old clocks and broken toys in the dust. He knew how things worked. "Wait!" Kai shouted. "If you put that key in now, the machine will explode." The Shadow Master stopped. He turned his head slowly. Explode? You are lying. I built this city. I know every bolt and every screw. You know the metal, Kai said, stepping forward. But you don't know the heart key. It's not just a key. It's a battery. Look at the blue light. It's flashing fast. That means the pressure is too high. If you don't turn the wheel first to let the air out, the energy will have nowhere to go. Bang! The Shadow Master looked at the key. It was flashing, but it was flashing because it was near the great valve. However, the Shadow Master was greedy, and greedy people are often afraid of losing what they have. He hesitated for just 1 second. In that second, Kai ran. He didn't run for the door. He ran for a small control panel on the wall. He remembered what his grandfather told him. Every machine has a reset button. You just have to find it. Kai saw a red lever behind a glass box. He didn't have a hammer, so he used his heavy boot. Smash! The glass broke. He pulled the lever down with all his weight. No! The Shadow Master screamed. The room began to shake. A loud siren started to wail. We are! The giant black chains holding the wheel began to vibrate. The Shadow Master dropped the heart key as he tried to grab the wheel to keep it locked. Kai dived for the floor. He crawled through the Shadow Master's legs and grabbed the glowing heart key. Ignis! Now! Kai screamed at the top of his lungs. Suddenly, the ceiling of the tower crashed open. Dust and rocks fell everywhere. A giant silver claw reached down and grabbed the Shadow Master, lifting him into the air. It was Ignis! The dragon had defeated the guards and come for Kai. The wheel, Kai! Turn the wheel! Ignis roared. Kai ran to the great valve. It was huge and heavy. He put his hands on the cold iron. He pushed. It didn't move. He pushed again, his face turning red. Help me! The heart key in his hand began to glow brighter than ever. The blue light flowed from the key into Kai's arms, giving him a burst of strength he never knew he had. Slowly, the wheel began to turn. Creak, clunk, creak. A sound like 1,000 waterfalls filled the tower. Deep underground, the great river, which had been trapped for years, finally broke free. The pipes began to shake and sing, whoosh! The water rushed through the valve. It didn't stay in the dark city. It followed the old stone path, flowing out toward the dry lands, toward Oakhaven, and toward the thirsty trees. The Shadow Master, still held by Ignis, looked down at his city. The black fires were being put out by the rushing water. His machines were stopping. His power was disappearing. It's over, Kai panted, leaning against the now spinning wheel. The water belongs to everyone. Ignis lowered the Shadow Master to a high balcony where he couldn't escape. Then, the dragon lowered his head so Kai could jump onto his neck. Let's go home, Kai, Ignis said softly. The rain is coming. Chapter 8. The Return of the Rain. The flight back to Oakhaven was different from the flight to the Dark City. Before, the air was dry and smelled like smoke. Now the air was cool and sweet. As Ignis flew low over the ground, Kai looked down. He saw the water moving like a long silver snake through the dry dirt. It was the great river, returning to its old home. Look, Ignis! Kai shouted, pointing down. The river is winning! Everywhere the water touched, the earth seemed to wake up. The cracked ground began to soften. But the most amazing thing happened when they reached the borders of Oakhaven. The sky, which had been empty and grey for years, was now filled with heavy, dark clouds. Rumble. Rumble. Is that thunder? Kai asked, his eyes wide. Yes, Kai, Ignis replied. The water in the river is evaporating and creating clouds. The cycle of life is starting again. Suddenly, a tiny drop of water hit Kai's nose. Then another hit his cheek. Drip, drop, drip, drop. And then it happened. The sky opened up and the rain began to fall. It wasn't a scary storm. It was a gentle, warm rain that felt like 1,000,000 tiny kisses on Kai's skin. As they landed in the middle of the village square, everyone was outside. They weren't hiding from the rain. They were dancing in it. Old men were holding their hats up to catch the water. Children were splashing in the new puddles, laughing and screaming with joy. Mr. Bram, the old man who had told Kai about the key, stood in the centre of the square. He was soaked from head to toe, but he had the biggest smile Kai had ever seen. When he saw the giant iron dragon land, he stopped dancing. "You did it, boy," Mr. Bram shouted. "You brought the rain back." Kai jumped down from Ignis's back. His mother ran through the crowd and hugged him so hard they both fell into the soft, wet mud. They didn't care about the dirt. They were just happy. "I was so scared, Kai," his mother whispered. "I wasn't alone, Mom," Kai said, looking at the giant metal dragon. "I had a friend." The villagers gathered around Ignis. At first, they were afraid of the giant metal beast, but Ignis lowered his head and made a soft, purring sound like a giant cat. He let the children touch his silver scales. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Iron Dragon was not a weapon of war. He was a symbol of hope. Chapter 9. The Golden Harvest. Weeks passed, and Oakhaven was no longer a dusty village. It was becoming a garden. The trees that looked dead suddenly grew tiny green buds. The grass grew so fast you could almost hear it stretching. The people planted seeds, and because the soil was so rich and the water was so clean, the food grew larger than anyone had ever seen. Kai became the hero of the village, but he didn't act like a king. Every morning he went to the cave at the base of the mountain to visit Ignis. "Don't you want to fly anymore?" Kai asked one morning. He was sitting on Ignis's foot, eating a large, sweet apple. "I have flown enough for one lifetime, Kai," Ignis said. His blue eyes were soft. "My joints are old, and the heart key is resting now. I want to stay here and watch the forest grow. I want to hear the birds sing in the trees again." "But what if the Shadow Master comes back?" Kai asked worriedly. Ignis looked at the village. The people were working together. They were building a library and a new well. They were sharing their food and their tools. "The Shadow Master only had power because the people were afraid and hungry," Ignis explained. "When people are happy and their bellies are full, shadows have no place to hide." "You didn't just bring water, Kai. You brought back the strength of the community. That is the strongest magic in the world." Kai looked at the heart key, which was now kept in a glass box in the centre of the village. It didn't glow bright blue anymore. It had a soft, steady pulse, like a sleeping heart. One afternoon, Maya, the girl from the previous story's style or a new friend, came to find Kai. "Kai, come look! The first flowers have opened on the hill." Kai stood up and waved goodbye to the dragon. He ran toward the hills, which were now covered in purple and yellow flowers. He felt the warm sun on his back and the cool breeze in his hair. He realized that he wasn't the small, weak boy anymore. He was a protector. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, the whole village sat down for a big feast. There was music, there was dancing, and there were stories. And the favourite story of all, told by every grandmother and grandfather, was the story of the boy who found a key and the dragon who remembered how to love the world. Chapter 10. The Legend of the Silver Leaf. Many years passed in the land of Oakhaven. The village was no longer a small, dusty place with broken fences. It had grown into a beautiful green city called the Garden of Ignis. The houses were built with white stone and had roofs covered in flowering vines. The air was always filled with the sweet smell of jasmine and the sound of the great river rushing nearby. Kai was no longer a small, messy-haired boy. He was now a tall man with a kind face and silver hair that reminded people of the dragon's scales. He was the mayor of the city, but he didn't like to sit in a big office. Most days you could find him in the fields, helping young farmers plant their crops, or at the school telling stories to the children. One warm autumn afternoon, Kai's grandson, a little boy named Leo, came running to him. Leo had the same bright green eyes that Kai had when he was young. "Grandpa! Grandpa!" Leo panted, holding a small rusty piece of metal. I found this in the old forest. Is it a part of a dragon? Kai took the metal and smiled. It was just an old tool from the days of the Shadow Master, but it reminded him of his long journey. He sat down on a wooden bench under a massive oak tree. The leaves of the tree were gold and red. "Sit down, Leo," Kai said softly. "It is time I told you the full story of the Iron Dragon and the Heart Key." "Is it true that the dragon was as big as a mountain?" Leo asked, his eyes wide with wonder. "To me, he was bigger than any mountain," Kai replied. He looked toward the Iron Mountain in the distance. The cave where Ignis lived was now covered in beautiful green moss and white flowers. It was a sacred place. No one went there to disturb the dragon's long sleep. "Ignis taught me a very important lesson, Leo," Kai continued. "He told me that machines can be broken and cities can fall, but a heart that cares for others can never be defeated. We keep the heart key in the city square not to remember the war, but to remember that we must always protect the water and the trees." As the sun began to set, turning the sky into a sea of deep purple and gold, Kai led Leo to the center of the city. There, inside a beautiful tower made of glass and wood, sat the heart key. It was still there, resting on a cushion of blue silk. Suddenly, the key began to glow. It wasn't a bright, angry flash. It was a soft, warm light, like a candle in a window. At the same moment, a deep, low sound echoed from the Iron Mountain. It sounded like a happy sigh or a distant rumble of thunder. The people of the city stopped what they were doing and looked toward the mountain. They smiled. They knew that Ignis was still there, watching over them in his sleep. "Will he ever wake up again, Grandpa?" Leo whispered. Kai patted the boy's head. "Only if the world truly needs him, Leo. Only if the shadows try to steal the light again. But as long as we share what we have, as long as we plant more than we cut, and as long as we are kind to one another, Ignis can rest in peace." Kai looked at his city, the green trees, the happy people, and the clean, sparkling water of the river. He felt a deep sense of peace in his heart. He had started his journey as a boy looking for a piece of bread, and he had ended it as a man who helped save the world. He took a small silver leaf from his pocket, a gift Ignis had given him many years ago, and handed it to Leo. "Keep this, my boy. Let it remind you that no matter how small you are, you can do great things if you have the courage to try." The stars began to twinkle in the night sky, looking exactly like the crystals inside the Cave of Stars. The legend of the boy and the Iron Dragon would live on, passed from father to son and mother to daughter, for 1,000 years to come. And so, the land of Oakhaven remained green, the river remained full, and the heart of the world continued to beat, strong and true.